Berkeley rep, and I think I was like 56, 58, I'm not sure, I don't remember. But, and then 14, the first time. I thought about it, and then really play it then, I just memorized the lines. I'm not kidding myself. But I feel like there's been a process towards the character for 50 years, and I'm really, really glad that the interpretation that I was able to give the role has been captured on film this way, because I feel really gratified that we were able to bring the idea, not only that this was their last chance at ambition, but that also to maybe illuminate something about the female condition and the female power structure of what I think Macbeth was using in that using from that period, and especially in this couple. And I feel like we really like I kept saying to Joel, nobody in 400 years everybody's done almost anything. It's not like we're inventing anything new, but I think the way that our cellular structure mixed made it a little different, and we certainly had that in mind when we were interpreting the character, and for me that's really gratifying.
I'm trying to call somebody in the back. Yeah. Yes.
For Joel, what was your greatest challenge in adapting Macbeth into a screenplay?
Question for Joel: what's the greatest challenge in adapting the text into a screenplay?
Adapting it into a screenplay. I'm trying. There were certain things that I saw in other movie adaptations of Shakespeare that I was trying not to do, and trying to figure out how not to do them. For instance, it's common in movie adaptations of Shakespeare that when there's a soliloquy, you don't actually see the actor speaking the soliloquy. You hear it in voiceover, and while he's, thinking about his lunch or something. You never know what the connection between what the actor is saying is recorded in voiceover, and now he's wandering around or moving around the set. It never really worked for me. So I thought, how do you do that and sort of preserve the language in the speeches and soliloquies, that have them speak, but still have it be in a at least quasi-realistic context, as opposed to going to the edge of the stage and or whatever the device might be. So that was part of it. And there are soliloquies, there are parts of what Macbeth says in the play are soliloquies that we incorporated into scenes, so that they're actually spoken. It was that kind of a thing. I guess that's kind of getting close to what you're asking. There were problems, or issues or challenges like that.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, Joel, you transferred, like scenes that happen on stage have a beginning, middle, and end, and they follow dramaturgically, whereas Joel intercut back and forth between scenes because in a film that just makes it more dynamic. That was, I don't think that was a challenge, but I think that was something that for me was really exciting about his adaptation.
Well, that's in particular, that's interesting, because Macbeth is a play that at the end of the play, Shakespeare at the time in the play is doing something which is essentially parallel editing in film. He's going from this scene to that scene, back to this scene to that scene, that are all supposed to be happening essentially in the same time, right? He's doing it theatrically, which I found really interesting. When we made the movie and in the adaptation, we kind of exaggerated. Because you can in a movie. So that was another example of how the play got adapted into a movie, and also how brilliant Shakespeare was as a dramatist to anticipate that kind of storytelling.
Oh, I think he'd be pleased, don't you?
Yes? Yeah?
My question is for Joel. So this is your second movie that you're releasing on a streaming service. Obviously, Macbeth will come out theatrically, but then it will release on Apple. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you see as the advantages and disadvantages of releasing your movies for companies like Netflix and Apple, and how do you feel about people maybe watching Macbeth on a smaller screen at Netflix?
Okay, yeah.
Quickly summarize, the question is about working, second time you're working with a streaming service. The film will be released theatrically and also on Apple TV, and I guess it's your feelings about this development in how you watch movies.
You know, as a filmmaker, you want the audience to see your movies on the best, most sophisticated, and biggest platform possible. That's just, that's why you spend all this time, which is talking to Denzel about the movie that he's finishing right now, tweaking every little detail and comments and the color and whatever it happens to be. However, one of the nightmares, I think, in film directors when someone says, "I saw your movie on an airplane." But here's the thing about streaming services from a personal point of view. When I first got into the movie business, which was, almost 40 years ago, 35, 78 years ago, the reason I was able to make movies with Ethan, the reason we were able to have a career, is because the studios at that point had an ancillary market that was a backstop for more risky films, which were VHS, cassette, or all of these home video markets, which is essentially television, right? So the fact that those markets are sort of responsible for my career make it, I'm not going to bust on them now because they've become very successful, and are sort of overtaking the market. I mean, it's the reason I'm here and able to do this stuff. So I have mixed feelings about it, obviously, which is the first thing. You want people to see it on a big screen. But the other part of it is that's been part of the history of our movies since the very beginning. That's the best answer I can give you.
We have to wrap up in 5 minutes, so let's try to squeeze in 2 quick questions. Yeah, right there.
Congratulations on the film. This is for everyone. Was there a particular passage that really helped you unlock who you want to do that the enterprise?
Could you hear me?
Barely. Tell me if I'm repeating correctly. You were asking everybody if there was a particular passage in the text
Yes.
that
Help you unlock who you want to do with this enterprise.
helped you unlock something in the process. Was there a particular passage in the screenplay that helped you unlock something in your process?
Shakespeare now.
Sorry. Yeah, Bill's call.
I love that phone.
Yeah, so you ask us that again?
Whether or not there was a particular passage in the play that helped us unlock what we wanted to do. I think for me, I pitched Joel the idea that, you know what, I was about to talk about my own performance, which is always a bad idea, so I'm going to stop right now. I mean, look, I think a part like the one I play can be played in so many different ways, and for me the key was about a sense of foreboding that maybe Macro sees very early on, almost in the instant that Macbeth receives the news from the witches, the prophecy. He knows his friend well enough to worry about where that might go. And that was a hook for me, and so the line is something like, that trusted home might yet enkindle you unto the crown, besides the flame of cordial. But 'tis strange, and oftentimes to win us to our harms, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles to betray us in deepest consequence. Which is just a great line, and it's so true, isn't it? And it's so the ambivalence of that warning. It's, you know, for me, it's I wanted it to be a warning, but you can warn something of someone of something you don't know. You know, like it's like giving advice to someone, isn't it? You have to be careful with advice because you don't really know what the future holds. That was the key for me.
And the eyebrows.
And the eyebrows, which are supra-textual, I would say. I struggle to find the eyebrows are very important.
What was for you then?
Well, I can't remember speeches like Bertie's done, so I can't quote anything. But I just remember thinking the most important thing about Malcolm is just how woefully unprepared he is for what happens to his dad. And that was kind of, I think, the crux for Malcolm. And then from that, he is spurred on to having to grow up very, very, very quickly. So that was the thing that I held on to.
I think oftentimes, at least growing up, Shakespeare's words seemed like something very hard to understand, not very much for me. And I think what I appreciate about what happens here in this film is that the language doesn't feel unattainable in that way. I think a lot of times it just gets put in a category all by itself, Shakespeare, this massive thing. But in reality, I think, which kind of sounds pretentious, is Shakespeare is really universal and it's for everybody, and it does lend itself to beauty and magic, and I think it's been captured really beautifully.
Joel said no, and or Fran too said no stick up the butt acting. Remember that? You know, we didn't want no couches with buttons.
Yeah, no upholstered sofas. Yeah, one of the things that I found in working on the role, a dramaturg once said to me, and I don't know if this is true, you guys might, that the meter and the words are inviolate, but the punctuation you can mess with. So in the text that I originally memorized or worked with when we were rehearsing the play, Macbeth says to Lady Macbeth, "What if we fail?" And her response is, "We fail?" ? And the dramaturg suggested to me, try taking the question mark away. And when I put an exclamation point on it, then it became my Lady Macbeth. What if we fail? We fail. But screw your courage to the sticking place and will not fail. Because for us, it's not a question of whether we're going to fail. It's a question of whether we're going to attempt to fail, which is all, from my point of view.
Let's go kill him now.
Let's go get him. He's an Aaron. We can't get to him. The king's an Aaron.
Okay, I've been told we can take one more. So, let's see. Yeah, right there. Yep.
Yeah, quick question. First of all, I'm in awe of this movie. It's far and away the greatest film, Macbeth. To one side. Joel, it's a question for you about Ross. And you've created this sort of narrator messenger figure as a kind of counterpose to the witches, perhaps, in the film. And you see him at the end with Cleants. I just wanted some comment on that.
Well, there's a tradition in productions of Macbeth that use Ross in different ways. And also in movie adaptations. So, for instance, in the Polanski version that Dennis was pointed out, was written by Ken Kynan. And I have a feeling this was something Kynan brought to it. You know, he made Ross the third murderer, which that is not something that there's a production history of that. But he kind of expanded that a little bit, and I thought that was really interesting, and wondered how it could be expanded even further. I don't know in what ways it has been in the past, but it was an interesting way to think about that character, and that's what kind of led to that ending and sort of ambiguous, the ambiguous sort of passage with Cleos when he finds him in the field. You know, I think obviously I've seen lots of productions of Macbeth. There are only so many productions of Macbeth on screen. That's one of the more interesting ones. I attribute a lot of it to Tynan, actually.
And I love about it that I just spoke about how I think Banquo maybe sees the writing on the wall earlier than others. But I love that scene where Lady Macbeth faints, and immediately afterwards, Malcolm and Donald Bain decide to flee. And you can tell that from that point onwards, nearly everybody's seeing the writing on the wall. And the reason it's apposite to the Ross thing is that I think what makes the play so political is that there will always be murderous tyrants, opportunist, ambitious people led down the primrose path, but it's what everybody else does around them that makes it really dangerous. And a figure like Ross, who in Alex's performances, you know, at times seems archly evil, but at other times just seems like somebody who is existing in a tyrannous state, trying to live on his wits and seeing which way the wind is blowing, feels very present and very kind of relevant. And it's the reason that these plays get done again and again and don't lose their sting, because you don't have to look very far to see that kind of stuff in the corridors of power anywhere in the world today. So I think it's a really smart gesture.
We do have to wrap it up now, but I want to thank all of you for being here.